Welcome to episode 45 of the Total Hockey Training Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Scahan. And before I introduce my next guest, just want to remind everybody, hey, if you like the show, I really like doing this. If you like the show, give us a ranking and please share it. We're across YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that. And it's been a lot of fun on this journey, seeing it grow. Also, the Total Hockey Training community is available. It's going to be there's going to be a price point on it pretty soon. So please, it's free. Please join. It's awesome. We got a lot of good content. We're going to have coaching calls on there real soon. And also Total Hockey Training via Train Heroic is going on. We're in our postseason phase now. And if you're a hockey player from anywhere around the world, you need a program, just hit me up on that. And I want to introduce my next guest. My next guest is Ryan Van Asten, or RVA as we call him. I love that three-letter sound. It's awesome. Ryan is the director of performance at Village Sports X Factory in Calgary. Prior to joining them, Ryan was the director of conditioning for the Calgary Flames from 2014 to 2023. Prior to that, Ryan was the strength and conditioning coach of the LA Kings from 2011 to 2014. He's also the author of Complete Conditioning for Hockey. I think that's by Kinetics.
Yep.
And yeah, Ryan, welcome to the show, man.
Well, thanks for having me, buddy. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, and I was just saying before, I love connecting with guys like you. I just had Pricer on the last episode. I know you
Oh,
guys
nice.
you guys are really tight, and so we'll have some similar background, which I like to get into. Yeah, it's great to connect with people, and I like to connect with people who are in their kind of post NHL phase of their career, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
awesome.
hey, tell us about, where you're from. I know you played a little bit, but tell us about your childhood, where you grew up, and how you got into sports performance.
Yeah, I grew up in Oshawa, Ontario. It's just about 45 minutes east of Toronto. Spent all my childhood there. Grew up playing hockey. Had an older brother, played hockey as well, and kicked the crap out of me every day. And I feel like that's a big part of, my journey and my kind of like resilience and all that kind of stuff was having that older brother to kind of keep me in check and all that. And, played minor hockey in Oshawa growing up. Played junior A, in a city just outside Oshawa called Ajax, and then went to Queen's University. Played 4 years there. Got a degree in life sciences and a degree in kinesiology. And then after that, I had like a little brief stint of playing. Well, I would even call it semi-pro in Germany.
Okay.
Did that for fun. Essentially knew my hockey career was coming to an end, but had an opportunity to have a little bit of fun over there. And then came to Calgary in 2005 to start a master's. So I did a master's of science in exercise physiology here in Calgary. And I came to Calgary essentially for in 1988, Calgary had the Winter Olympics.
Hmm.
So they had all kinds of these sport facilities already set up here. Tons of almost all the national winter athletes trained in Calgary, and this is the reason why I came to Calgary in the first place. There's Dave Smith and Steve Norris. I'm not sure if you've heard of those two guys are doing cool research in like sports performance, working with high end athletes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is where I need to go to do
Hmm.
grad school. And, just to have access to that, because there's no other school really in Canada that had access to that type of athlete. Um, so I did that, came out here, did some research, honestly, thought I was going to do a PhD. I wanted to be a researcher.
Hmm.
Um, I was really into training. Obviously, I've been, strength training and all that kind of stuff since I was like 14 years old. But I didn't actually even think that that was a career opportunity.
Hmm.
I'm like, I'm going to be a sports performance researcher. And then I came out here, saw what other guys like Matt Jordan, Stu McMillan, Scotty Maw, guys like that had done the masters and done all that stuff. But now we're actually sports performance coaches with the Canadian Sport Institute. And, just kind of, I started hanging out with those guys a little bit more. And then I just kind of like gradually veered towards that coaching side of things,
Hmm.
and then did an internship at Athletes Performance, right
Oh,
at
you
the tail
did
end. Yeah,
in
at the tail
in
end.
Arizona?
No, I was in Florida, Gulf
Okay,
Breeze. Yeah, so I went
nice.
to that facility there, did an internship there, and that really going down there kind of really opened my eyes to a different way of training. And it kind of solidified, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do. I'm going to put maybe I'll do the research down the road, but I want to, do this. This is way more fun, I
Hmm.
thought at the time. And, came back to Calgary after that internship, was lucky to land a job with the Canadian Sport Institute, working with the Canadian luge team. So this is a sport,
Wow.
honestly, like I didn't know anything about this sport, right? Like you watch it once every 4 years when it's on TV for the Olympics, but if that,
Yeah.
right? So I had to like learn this whole sport and trying to, just I was literally thrown into the fire and I'm like, okay, well, what do these guys and girls need to do from a training standpoint? That was pretty fun, actually, like experimenting and doing all kinds of stuff. And um, along the way, got hooked up with Hockey Canada, signed a contract with them, and became their head strength coach. And went to the Vancouver Olympics, and eventually made it to the NHL. And
Yeah.
it took a couple tries. I interviewed with twice and got rejected, and the third time was a charm. It got
Same
hooked up
team?
with the I interviewed with the Kings in 2009, and I don't know if I was ready at that time.
Hmm.
Um, but I would have made it work. And
Hmm.
I had like a good interview. I was at the time I was head strength coach for Hockey Canada. It was a very good interview. To be honest, they actually offered me an assistant position at the time where there were no most teams didn't have
No,
that
not then.
position.
Mm-mm.
And but they were, essentially like it's very, very part-time. We really like you and we want to bring you on, but it's part-time and we can potentially find some other opportunities for you. Meanwhile, I was the head strength coach for Hockey Canada and the Vancouver Olympics were 6 months away. And I was essentially like, as much as I wanted to take that King's job, I'm like, I don't know if I can like,
Right.
y- you
No.
know. Um, and then in 2010, I interviewed with Montreal,
Okay.
didn't get that job. It went well, same thing. Like I thought it went well, but didn't get the job. And then 2011 rolls around. The Kings weren't happy. Well, I don't know the situation, but their
Hmm.
strength coach left, and the job was open again, and I got it.
Nice. Well,
So
that's good. That's a good
yeah,
story.
that's a little rundown of how I got to the
Yeah.
NHL, anyways.
My interview was with Mike Babcock in Las Vegas.
Oh yeah,
That was my first intro to Babs. And yeah, it was like a whirlwind. And then 2 days later he calls me and that was it. That was fun. That
nice.
was back in 2002. So yeah, that's a
A
cool
long time.
story. So the
Yeah.
Canadian Sports Institute, talk about that. You were able to have a foundation of research before you went to the sports performance. Now, wasn't Charles involved with the Canadian Sports Institute a long time
He
ago?
w- he was, and he was actually worked with the Canadian luge team as well.
Okay,
So
okay.
I don't know the gap, but we essentially did the same job at one point.
Wow.
He was years and years. He was gone long before I was there, but
Sure.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
that's
he was there.
interesting. And
Yeah,
Pricer talked about how he worked with the ski team there.
yep.
And
So
it's
Pricer and I went through grad school at the same time.
okay.
Yeah, we started the same year. We kind of aligned in the path there. He went with the alpine ski teams. I went with hockey and luge. So
Okay. So you guys
yeah,
are in grad school together, both former players around the same time. So that's why you guys had a good connection there then.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's cool. So I want to talk about the Kings. All right, so 2011, and I'll say this, being honest, they had some. I mean, I guess I started with Anaheim in 2002, and I was there for 13 years. The Kings at the time had some. I hate to say instability. They had guys in and out of there 1, 2 years. Um, and they're always the Kings. They weren't that good, and then it's around. And I'm going to say this, like we're strength and conditioning coaches, but I like to think we're a part of it. And I talked to Nelson about that, and I'm like, yeah, heck yeah. And so you come down to LA and 3 cups in 3 years?
Two,
No, no, two cups in 3 years. I know that. Two cups
two
in
and
three
three.
years. So you just come down and say, all right, we're gonna get this going, and 2 cups in 3 years. And obviously I know there was the year, the Devils year, but I think the Rangers win was, it's something in hockey I don't think gets enough credit because that team, the Kings team, goes and wins 3 game 7s on away ice and just I think you killed the not killed. You beat the Rangers in 5 or 6, right? And I think
Yeah,
and I obviously working for that Ducks team, that was an unbelievable series and the Kings just, it first they had to beat San Jose down 3 rip. And I remember that. I remember reading like Doughty's quotes and all that. And it was a pretty big matchup between LA and Anaheim the second round. And,
yeah.
the Ducks lost game 7. And then the Chicago game, when Chicago was on top of the world at that time. And yeah, talk about, I want to know what that run was like. And I want to know what that culture was like. Because I had a lot of admiration and respect for those guys like Doughty and Carter and, Stoll and those guys. Like it seemed like a tight group.
Really, really tight group. This is the only reason we won. And it's not like we were the most skilled team, right?
No.
Like tight group uh, and hard work. Obviously, good players. I mean, that's a given, but it was crazy. Like 2012, I don't like, I look back and I'm 2012. We're going into the Stanley Cup final.
Excuse me.
We're going into the Stanley Cup final and we lost 2 games, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
we're like, oh, and then in the final we went up 3-0 on Jersey
Hmm.
and we won in 6, but it was like we were rolling. Like
Yeah.
okay, and then 2013 it was a tough who did we play? St. Louis in the first round was just a war. St.
Wasn't the
Louis at
Sharks? No?
2013, so the year in
Oh,
between.
okay, yeah. You
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
Yeah, the year you didn't
Yeah.
win it. Yeah.
Yeah, we played St. Louis, then we played San Jose, just war like battles,
Yeah.
like they were
Hmm.
just, and then we played Chicago in the conference finals and we had no juice. We
Hmm.
had no juice left. And we came back in 2014, like regular season wise, we're a solid team, but we're not winning the division or anything like that, right? But
Hmm.
we were just built for the playoffs, not
Hmm.
only like in team structure and all that, but just our mentality. It was built for the playoffs. And then we play San Jose in the first round and go down 3-0. And you're
Hmm.
just like, what is going on? The funny thing is I actually remember I think it was Justin Williams.
Hmm.
Like this guy. So here's the thing about this team is we talked about how this team won. There's 6 or 7 guys in that team that didn't even have a letter on their jersey that to be a captain on any other team in the league, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why that team was so successful. But I remember it might have been after game 3 where we lost in overtime on a fluke goal, kind of floater over top of Quick, and he didn't even know where the puck was, kind of thing, deflection. And I remember Justin Williams after the game or hearing him say something along the lines of, "Yeah, we're going to win this series for sure."
After game 3.
After game 3, we're down 3-0.
Wow.
And the odds are like, 3 teams in the
Yeah.
history of the NHL have come back from that.
Right.
And we did it. and won game seven on the road. Um, it was just the process for those guys. Like we're gonna go out, we just need to win one game.
Yeah.
We need to win one game. That's all you need to do. And they did it. Like to their credit, it was amazing. And we played you guys in the second round. Another like there that was arguably the hardest road to the Stanley Cup.
Yeah,
The three
absolutely it
game
was.
sevens on the road. We played you guys. It was always a war between
Hmm.
LA and Anaheim at that time. And so the Pacific was amazing at that time.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, and that went to game seven. Was it overtime? I can't remember.
No, no, not no. Mary and Gabrick showed up and had a great
Yeah.
game. Yeah.
And
It was
then
good.
obviously, like I felt like at that time it was between us and Chicago.
Yeah.
Every
Hmm.
like we felt like whoever wins this series is going to win the cup. That's what it
Hmm.
felt like. And I think, we were up in that series 3-1. They're obviously the Chicago Blackhawks. They come back and tie it. We go into Chicago. Um, they scored literally two goals in the first 5 minutes of the game. And we're like, oh my gosh,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
somehow we managed to tie it up. And then literally we tie it up. And 10 seconds later, right off the faceoff, they come down and score 3-2. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then we tied it up relatively late in the third, maybe halfway through the third, and went to overtime and won. That was probably like as a strength coach at that point in time, you're like, I'm sitting back there. I'm probably the most stressed out guy
Yeah.
in the
Hmm.
building,
Hmm.
right? Like, because there's nothing you can do.
No, nothing.
Um,
Nothing.
and and then yeah, we won that. And Rangers, it's funny because we beat the Rangers in five, right? And people are like, oh, that was easy. But like two of the three games went to double overtime, including game
Hmm.
five. And one of the one of the five games was overtime. So three of the five games went into overtime or double overtime. It's way closer than it seemed.
Yeah.
Those
Hmm.
games could have gone either way, right? Like
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
wasn't a steamrolling. That was a hard series too.
Yeah. Oh, but you guys had the fortitude and the resiliency. That was yeah, you kind of look back and I don't know, I had a lot of admiration and respect for that group that year. Yeah, you had guys like, I don't know, Dwight King
Yeah.
or like who was a defenseman who played in Calgary for years? Um
Robin Regeer.
Robin Regeer, you had Matt
We had
Green, yeah,
Matt Green, Willie Mitchell,
Willie Mitchell,
like
yeah.
all these guys like kind of go under the radar a little bit, but without them, you're not winning
And
anything.
big too. And it makes you think like, when I worked for Minnesota for years, like around that time, that California trip had to have been brutal because you had
Oh,
to play LA, Anaheim back to back. You had to play two out of those three teams back to back. You're either
absolutely.
going Anaheim, San Jose, down to LA. Like that must have been brutal for those East Coast teams who, because all three teams were hard, heavy.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, we're strength and conditioning coaches, but like I don't know, I get my juices going talking about that. So, like talk about like those overtimes. Like to me, sometimes I think back, like I miss those deep playoff runs. Like we had like a five overtime win over Dallas my first year and some double overtimes in '07. Like I miss like that. You talked about it, like that stress of watching the game and getting everything prepared in the locker room and making sure so and so had this or that. Like
Oh yeah.
I do miss those days sometimes, but talk about that. Do you ever like think about that?
Oh, honestly, like it is the number one thing that I miss
Yeah.
about that job.
Hmm.
Well, there's a couple things that I miss. One is kind of being part of that team, right?
Yeah.
The second is one thing I always said to my interns and stuff, like, listen, my time in Calgary, we had some ups and downs and all that. We were a good team for a couple of years and not so great when I first started and all that. And after games, when you lose or if you lose in the playoffs or it's tough,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
yeah, it's just a game, whatever, but it's not just a game for everyone inside. That's their
No.
livelihood. It's what they've worked their whole lives to do. And there's these huge like ups and downs. And I always said that to my interns, even when when you lose a game, even if it's November, the mood is
Yeah.
pretty low, like because every game matters. And that honestly is what makes that job great.
Yeah.
You can go and work in an office 9 to 5 and be status quo, same every single day, nothing changes, whatever. And it's just status quo. Or you can work in professional sports or sports in general, and you experience those highs and lows. And the lows are terrible.
Hmm.
And but it's outweighed by the highs, and if those times are going to come for sure if you're around long enough, and that's kind of what makes it good and exciting. And that's one
Hmm.
thing that I miss is that you know being part of that team and experiencing that kind of roller coaster of emotions throughout the year. That's what made it great.
Yeah, and I I agree. When we would do our post game workouts, and if we lost the game, the guys knew, okay, we're gonna go work out. And I say this sometimes, like those are some of our best training sessions. They're gonna come in and get their work and take off. Like,
Yeah,
sometimes after a big win, they might, be not as focused, but when you lose a game and it's dictated by the personality of the leaders. If they're grumpy, not talking to anyone, everyone else kind of falls into play. But yeah, you're right. And then you might have someone come ask you a question like, "Hey, did you watch that? What'd you think of that?" I,
yeah,
I miss that interaction for sure.
me too.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's interesting. So talk about you went back to Calgary. If I'm not mistaken, your wife's a medical doctor,
Yep,
correct? And so
yep,
she's working in the Calgary hospital system.
yep.
Okay, so that was an easy fit for you. You had Daryl there too, and there was a good transition for you, right?
Daryl came after.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, so when I first started, so when I left the Kings to come back to Calgary, um, Bob Hartley was the head coach.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like Daryl.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
like Bob. I like Bob. He got a lot out of the team. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I believe he won the Jack Adams Award my first
He
year
he
there.
he was one of those guys. Correct me if I'm wrong. You don't have to divulge much, but he was one of those guys who thought the strength and conditioning coach needed to be a jerk to the players, right? Sometimes.
Um, I don't know.
Yeah.
He's hard. He's a hard coach, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
he's from that mold.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't know if it's because of my history with LA and the fact that I'd won a championship
Credibility.
and all that
Yeah,
credibility. Like he just kind of let me do my own thing,
that's good.
whatever
Yeah.
I needed to do. I'm not saying he never came down on me
Mm-hmm.
because
Yep.
that
That's
happens. It's just
Yeah,
part of
it
the
does
gig.
happen. Absolutely.
And but I think for the most part, he just kind of let me
That's good.
do. I challenged him on a couple things. He
Mm-hmm.
wanted to do a couple things like early fitness testing things that I
Mm-hmm.
didn't think made sense. Um, and I challenged him, and he, you know, said, "Okay, you're the expert. You do what you want to do."
Great.
So that was
That's
good.
respect. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that kind of thing was good. He did want me to do certain things that team in particular wasn't used to, like running mandatory warm-ups and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, other than that, he was good to me.
Mandatory warm-ups, I always thought we would have mandatory warm-ups during training camp. And you could tell the players were like, all right, I don't need to be doing this. But when it's like part of an itinerary that they get every day, it's amazing how all these guys, like I always say, I used to call the whiteboard in the locker room the magic board. Whatever you wrote on that was like it's ingrained in them to do what they're supposed to do at times. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
so, yeah.
The mandatory warm-up thing was initially like a shock to those guys,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Like, um, they would be chirping me and stuff
Yeah,
like
oh
that.
yeah.
And I'm just like, hey, 2 cups, like whatever.
Two
And
cups,
they
no
like,
cup. Yeah,
they,
exactly.
they
What do
like,
you, how do you win a cup and we can talk about mandatory warm-ups?
they liked it. It was fine. But to be honest, like initially it was a shock, but then it just became part of the routine.
Yeah,
And it was
absolutely.
kind of a good time. Guys would joke around and stuff like that. And listen, like, yeah, not every player was doing it to the best of their ability, or getting the most out of it, I would
Right.
say. However, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, this guy's doing this warm up at 50%.
Hmm.
That's 50% more than what he would normally do by drinking a coffee and putting his gear on and going out.
Yeah,
So
right, right.
I'm like, yeah, he's probably getting something out of
I used to
it.
have team stretches with Anaheim, and it became like not I won't say it was a joke. Everyone was in there, but you'd have a guy like baking his skates during the
Oh
stretch.
yeah. Oh yeah.
You're like, oh, come on, man. Like he's a coach in the NHL, which is kind of funny. It's just funny to see those guys become coaches that they got away with doing stuff that they don't want their players to do right now, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
No, and they're good coaches, so that's
Yeah.
awesome. I love talking about this stuff. So talk about your post NHL, what you're up to, and do you miss it? Do you want to go back, or are you pretty happy with what's going on in your life right now?
Yeah, so essentially, I think it was the COVID year where we had the Canadian division, this company, Village Sports. One of the founders I actually played hockey with in university,
Oh wow.
and they did mostly on ice stuff with hockey players. They had like a golf academy and then like a school academy as well. And they were considering opening a gym, and essentially they were trying to recruit me to run that.
Hmm.
And at the time I was like, well, I'm not done with my NHL career. I still have whatever number of years left of my contract, and I don't really want to leave the NHL at this point. But I can help and I can consult, and the Flames let me do that. So I basically would was help them build the gym, wrote the programs, 90% of the programs, and then help them in the off season, would train a one group, maybe something like that. Knowing for me that this was potentially my exit strategy, because at that time I had one kid who was still under a year old, and I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm on the road all the time and whatever. And then you add another kid into the mix, and not home, right? And I'm
Hmm.
kind of like, that that's the most important thing in my life,
Hmm.
is my kids and my family. And I have 2 girls, and I've thought, like they need a dad that's
Hmm.
there. And I
Hmm.
think that's really important. And if I'm away half the season, it's not fair to them. And this was kind of my exit strategy. So I was able to leave the NHL, jump into this, and become a partner in the business, which was important to me. And yeah, so now I'm basically running all the performance stuff in this gym, and throughout the company, and it's been great. Do I miss being part of a team? Yeah, I miss being part of a team. I have still great friendships um, with staff around the league, and
Hmm.
particularly with the Flames, and still talk to those guys. As a matter of fact, right after this strength coach for the Flames is coming over to the gym here, and we're going to go out for
Nice.
lunch. So, I still have all these friendships and stuff. So I do miss that part of it. I miss being part of a team. I miss the games, the ups and downs, and all that kind of stuff. Not to say, as you know, there aren't ups and downs in private business, but
Right, right.
um, and will I ever go back? I don't know.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know. First of all, it would depend on the opportunity, um, and what that would look like with my family. Like, I
Hmm.
left the NHL to be able to, you know, help coach my daughter's hockey on Saturday mornings and go
Yeah,
skiing with my
that's awesome.
family and drive my daughter to school and do swimming lessons and all that kind of stuff and have weekends off. And, I don't want to, it would have to be the
Yeah,
right opportunity, I
right,
think.
right. Yeah.
But I'm not going to say never
Hmm.
because I do love that side of it.
Yeah, that's one thing I do miss is the camaraderie and the back and forth. What I don't miss is the late nights,
Yeah.
having to come back in the morning and train someone,
Yeah.
and like
Like I watch
it's
a
4 in
Flames
the
game on
morning, you know.
I watch a Flames game on TV now and turn it off and go to bed. I'm in bed at 10 o'clock every night.
Yeah, yeah, you're not going to an airport and going through
Yeah.
customs and yeah, no, I hear you. But I think it's important that you did have an exit strategy and you formulated that plan and you executed it.
Yeah.
That's part of it. And I think people need to have an idea of what can and will happen when it ends. But winning two cups makes it a little easier, doesn't it? It's because
Yeah.
it's
I
what
mean,
everyone does it for. It's to win the
yeah,
cup.
absolutely. And I got lucky, man. Like, I'm not gonna, like, I mean, if let's be honest, if you win a cup like yourself, there's a bit of luck involved. But to
Yeah.
do get 2 and 3 years right off the hop, like, come on, like
Yeah,
that doesn't
right.
that doesn't happen, right? Guys have been in the league for 20 plus years and have come close but haven't got there. It's hard to think this
Oh,
hardest thing in sports to do.
it's crazy. My first season, game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, we lost. Then there was another season, then a lockout year, and then the fourth year, win the thing. And then
Yeah.
like going to the Western Conference Finals, like a lot,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, bang, like you haven't been out of the first round in a long time. It's just
Yeah,
crazy how that works. It's
totally.
But yeah, that's great. So where could folks find out more about you? I know you're on Instagram, and how could people, if
Yeah,
they're in Calgary, they want to come by and see you or something?
yeah. Social media, I've ever since I left the NH, so I was like a anti-social media type guy before.
Yeah,
And ever since I left the NHL, I'm like, I need to do this. So I've been quite active on Instagram,
yeah, you have been.
Coach Van Asten. Um, that's probably the best way to find me if you're in Calgary. Just Google Village Sports and send me a message and come by for a chat. That'd be great. I'm always open to that. But
Awesome.
yeah, I would say Instagram's probably the best place to find me.
Okay, cool. Well, listeners, yeah, just want to say thanks to RVA for coming on. Check out his nice background there if you're on video. It's a lot of good pictures up there. Those Kings Cup runs. Those are nice
Yeah,
pictures. That's
lot of
great.
history
A
there.
lot of
Yeah, it's
history
good.
there. But RVA, thanks for coming on, pal. And it's great to see you and catch up. And I'm glad things are going well for you. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks for having me, buddy.
All right, thanks, Ryan. Take care.